the Kite Trust, we span Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and as Chris says, we work with LGBTQ plus young people. We were kind of our roots are kind of 30 years old, and we've existed in our own entity now for 20 of those years. And we started out very much as a um, council funded youth service, and so kind of public funding. I will not surprise anybody on the call that that money has disappeared over the last 20 years. And so we've seen a real shift from actually having a kind of core unrestricted grant to do our youth work, coming from the county council and Cambridge City Council. We still have small grants from them in the mix, but they're really nowhere near as substantial. They used to be talking about 60-70% of our income were those kind of two grants. And so looking at that mix of funding has been really important to us over a kind of 10-year period as it's affected particularly the youth sector. And what a lot of it is we've shifted more to other kind of trusts and foundations that are grant giving, still make up about more than 80% of our income as an organisation. But we have been exploring trading, I guess, for a while. And at the moment, we consider all of our training primary purpose, and we do that within our main registered charity. We were only a registered charity until 2020, and we realized there was a lot of risk in that. With that, we didn't have any kind of company limited by guarantee around it, so we changed to being a CIO, a charitable incorporated organization, from 2020. But that wasn't really linked to trading, it was linked to governance risk, and it was felt that because it was primary purpose we could keep that all within one entity. We do keep an eye on that on a rolling basis because it has grown over the years. And so I would say there's three strands to our trading. The smallest and most least significant is kind of bits and pieces of merchandise and some events income. So where we've done we had a queer homecoming event and we sold refreshments, very much like Livia's examples. And we are currently in the process. This Saturday we're hosting Fenland Pride, and we've created a kind of a range of merchandise of kind of t-shirts and badges that help people kind of also celebrate and express LGBTQ plus identity. So we really see that although it's merchandise, it is very much linked to the purpose of the event in terms of creating community and connecting LGBTQ plus young people together. At the moment, that we're talking about £500 to £1,000 a year, going through income in terms of that kind of area. And this year, our anticipated turnover is about 750,000. So I'm not going to do the percentage off the top of my head, but it's relatively small. The next kind of strand that has previously sat within kind of a sense of trading is trading, but is very primary purpose, is our work with schools. So again, it is something that we had substantial grant funding, and in fact, at a time when LGBTQ plus rights were being actively supported by the government, we had a Government Equalities Office grant to set up our schools programme, the Rainbow Flag Award, in partnership with a range of other LGBTQ plus organisations. It meant we could offer it free for the first 3 years. So that was from 2017 to 2020. We had a number of places that were free for the schools to sign up and complete. But what we actually found, because when it was offered free, a lot of them were much more keen to sign up, but not necessarily complete it because the value placed on it of it being a free service. And so there's a bit of exploring done, and we've done this in collaboration with with the Proud Trust, who are based in Manchester, All Sorts, who are based in Brighton, and Humankind, who are based up in Newcastle. We kind of jointly own the Rainbow Flag Award, and then it is licensed out to a number of partners across the country to deliver as a nationwide programme of schools tackling homophobic, biphobic and transphobic bullying. And when that funding came to the end in 2020, we did the piece of work together to work out what is that as a self-sufficient. And I will say it has not yet got to quite self-sufficient. So it is paid for by the fees that schools pay to take part and some additional service around it they can buy in. We have to subsidise the staff costs that are actually needed to do that, and we do that because it's so clearly aligned to our primary purpose of improving the lives of LGBTQ plus young people, the ones who are under 18, the majority of their time is spent in that school environment. And so making that environment inclusive is something that, whilst that hasn't taken off in terms of the hope that it would be successful trading, it's a program we continue to deliver because of the importance of it to our mission. And so we'd previously been considering it in the same way that we consider the next part of that I'm going to talk to in terms of our training consultancy services as income generating for the charity. But with the trustees last year, we took the decision that the state schools are currently in, we cannot expect to grow that program in a way that is going to generate income and profit for the organisation, but are continuing to deliver it in a way to try and break even of the costs of delivering it, because of the impact it has. So I guess it was a bit of an experiment, and because it aligned so clearly to our primary purpose, and the financial risks were limited to a certain extent, because it's work that schools ask us to do anyway. We have done it within that CIO entity. But going forwards, we've moved our thinking about our schools program from the kind of trading side of the organisation and the fundraising side of the organisation to the program delivery side of the organisation alongside our youth work programs. So the final strand of it that has really grown in success in generating income for us is training consultancy. And this is something that through our board and our particular delegated finance committee, we've had a lot of conversations around the line on primary purpose and non-primary purpose for us, because generally we work with providing LGBTQ plus or trans inclusion training to organisations that have some sort of impact on the lives of LGBTQ plus young people. Where you draw the line on that is quite difficult to have a very concrete answer. And so we've gone a lot of discussion of weighing up kind of each individual contract and each individual service we're delivering as to where we see that as falling. And currently we're just taking that overall threshold of £80,000 being where we really need to firmly pull that out and label it all separately to work out our tax liability, which might be in the next couple of years. But at the moment we're under it. So what I'm going to do briefly is share this table, which will give a little bit of an idea of kind of the growth of what we've done with, and this is just training and consultancy services delivered around LGBTQ plus and sometimes specifically around trans inclusion and awareness. So we started out back in 2017, 2018. There was little bits before this, but this is where it started to be kind of enough substantial to pull out in our accounts. We were talking about a couple of £1,000s income. At that time, our turnover was around 150,000. So we are talking about between 1% and 2% of our income that year through doing those pieces of work, and it was met with staff capacity that was otherwise also delivering other services for the organisation. We follow that similar model until we get to 2020, and that's when we did quite a bit of kind of governance work. We became a CIO. We did some of our kind of reframing of what our structures and processes look like, and also wrote a new strategic plan for the next 5 years. And within that was trying to develop our income from training consultancy to be a profit making and making a substantial contribution in unrestricted amounts to the charity. We then had a pandemic, and that put a huge spanner in the works of the intended plans. And as you'll see, in 2020, we ended up making a loss. We did meet that with some emergency grant funding to allow us to deliver it. I will say, up to 2020, the product that we gave was we were going into places and delivering sessions, face-to-face workshops. And so what we got a grant to do in 2020 was, how do we do that online? Learning what that product needs to be different for the online and the context of the pandemic that we were in at the time. And so it didn't draw down from our reserves in that -6,000, it was actually be able to meet it with a grant fund to try and work out how we could get back on a growth path. The following year, we were very successful in that growth path, and with the same amount of expenditure on kind of staff time and investment in it, we made a significant profit. And I think in that year, 14,000 represents about 5% of our total income for the year. What we then did was invest in more capacity to further grow it. And that's where the following year we come to a break even. And now we're back on this track of we're having set up a new model. So we have some core staff in a training officer and a manager overseeing the program, who are kind of fixed salaried costs. But we then have created a bank of associate trainers for delivering the work who are all on freelance contracts, which means that our expenditure becomes scalable to our income. And they are we're less dependent on how sometimes politics changes the interest and the also financial resources for engaging with particularly EDI type work. And so having that kind of flexibility in having a pool of associate trainers has meant also that we've got a whole wealth of background and expertise. So we have individuals from public, private, education, health, working as associate trainers for us, which means that we can then employ a trainer who has some really relevant experience and expertise for the particular audience that then they are delivering to. So I'm going to stop sharing there. And so where we're at the moment with that is we have got back to being a small amount of profit generating. We've made some further investment in the staff team and the resources we're putting into that work, particularly because all of this has really grown on word of mouth. And we've not previously had any investment in marketing and generating new leads. And that's something we've currently just in the process of a draft plan that's going to the board in July of a business development plan for this work, where we are identifying the systems, processes and marketing we want to invest in heavily to be able to scale this up to be contributing in the region of 5% of our overall turnover. We're still majoritively grant funded because of the work we do, and it's really important for us that the youth workspace is free to access, and there are no costs to the service users in that space. But so this is making some of those lovely unrestricted money that we can then put into reserves, and we can have flexibility for other projects and things like that.
Perhaps I'd say a little bit about Romsey Mill, because I'm aware that at least one person, Hannah, who's in Sheffield, joining the workshop today. One of my daughters lived and studied in Sheffield, so I love Sheffield as a place. So it's great that Hannah's with us. But there may be one or two others that don't know Romsey Mill. So very briefly, Romsey Mill is a charity, also for governance purposes, a company limited by guarantee. And we really exist to nurture relationships with young people, children, families, and local communities. And then through those relationships, we're working together to overcome challenge, to create opportunities, to equip and support, and to, I suppose, inspire hope. So that's what we're up to. And we would be alongside about 2,500 young people, children, families, or members from local communities in each year. Just to give you a little bit of sense of Romsey Mill as an organisation, it's very difficult sometimes. Chris and I had a conversation about whether is Romsey Mill a medium-sized charity? Are we a large charity? Where do we sit? So perhaps just to give you a few metrics numbers. So we employ, so our team members, our employed staff, and we talk about volunteers as well, but those that are employed within the Romsey Mill team, we have 64 team members, a full-time equivalent of 33 staff members. So quite a rich mix of part-time, sessional, and then full-time staff. And for the year that we're in, our budgeted expenditure is about £1.7 million. So And we've seen incremental growth, steady incremental growth over the last well, certainly the 17, 18 years that I've been with Romsey Mill. I think when I joined, our turnover was about £550,000, and so it's just been gradual and steady. And obviously, because costs go up, that growth is in part to meet the increased costs. So that gives you a little bit of a sense of where we are. If I just share a slide to give an indication of where we're going, and then I'll take the slide. I will then take the slide off. I'm not in presentation mode, am I? But can you see that? Is that all right? So that's what I'll cover. A little bit about Romsey Mill's trading activities and income from that. How we think about trading and charitable mission. A little bit of Romsey Mill's future thinking, and then I've got one more slide with just a few thoughts, perhaps to that we can consider as we think about diversifying income. So that's where we're going to go, but I'll stop sharing the screen because then we can see one another much better. So let me talk about Romsey Mill's current trading activities. And when I talk about trading, there are different ways, as we've heard, we can categorize primary, ancillary, other trading. But perhaps helpful to give you one of the ways we internally categorize the way we go about our work and what income's generated through that. We have 4 broad categories. So we have trust income, we have statutory income, we have trading income, and then we have community income, which includes fundraising from individuals and events and in other ways. So that's how we internally categorize. And so we have a category which is trading, but obviously we do some of our contract work could also be considered as primary trading. But if we have those 4 categories of trust, statutory, trading, and community, fairly consistently for the last few years, our trading income has been at about 16-17% of our income. And so for this year, so that's not including any contract income. So for this year, our trading income is just short of £300,000. So that gives you a sense of what we're up to. And then to describe what we do very briefly, Romsey Mill has had a charity shop that is on Mill Road, has moved from one location to another, but is firmly settled on Mill Road. Been running a charity shop for 20 years, selling household goods, clothing items, some small electrical goods and other bits and pieces. It's very much part of our community and our work. I'll say more about that. Cara Coffee is a Romsey Mill social enterprise. We own a coffee shop in Shelford. We opened in 2019. We almost made it through to a full year of our social enterprise trading and activities before COVID came along, and then we had a year of the challenge of that. But we're just renewing our lease on the property and our agreement with a local partner. So we'll be running that again, hopefully for the next 5 years. That's the plan. And then we have some room hire income that comes from 3 buildings that we look after: our own Romsey Mill Centre, and then Ross Street Community Centre and Mill Road Community Centre. They're all along Mill Road, and the key thing with that is you can get to them all on foot within a very short space of time. So it makes the management of that much more efficient than if they were in other parts of the city. So that was quite important to us, taking on certain buildings to make them available to community. We did a little bit of training, and in the past we've gathered up some of our, intellectual property and produced resources that we've sold. We don't do so much of that, haven't been doing so much of that the last few years. So that's what we're up to. Let me go back to my slide on my other screen. Trading and charitable mission. So this is fascinating, I think, have long conversations about this, because there's a sense in which we can consider trading to be quite transactional in how we approach trading. So we might think, as we think about it being transactional, we might think about the fact that the need for the trading to be efficient, to be standardized, to be well managed in terms of time, resource, and other resources. But actually, at the heart of Romsey Mill are relationships. So wherever we're doing trading, whether it's primary or ancillary or other trading, all the time we're thinking about the relationships, and we're thinking about what's at the heart of Romsey Mill: creating those relationships, nurturing relationships that then lead to us being alongside people, creating opportunities, overcoming challenges, and inspiring hope. And so we always look at trading opportunities, or we do now more so. I think in the past it's been opportunistic to some extent, but I think now we always look at trading opportunities through the primary lens of relationships. And in our charity shop and in Cara Coffee, and even in some of our room hire and other activities, we have young people and other people from local community participants who are very much at the heart of that work. So, for example, Liz Diamond, who is a diamond, Liz, who manages our charity shop on Mill Road. She's not our charity shop manager. She's our community development manager for the charity shop. So seeing it in those terms for us, so that then what happens is your trading becomes fair, trusting, reciprocal. It becomes more about, perhaps even a bit more organic. So for us, that's really important as we think about trading and our charitable mission. Future thinking, I think for Romsey Mill, we'll carry on doing what we're doing. We do want to consider more the IP, the way we can perhaps take some of our knowledge and experience and think about how there may be organisations or people, audiences that we might offer that to in a way that's more trading and perhaps more ancillary or even apart from our charitable purposes. But the reality is trading takes a huge amount of time and effort. And so I think one of the key things for us, and I'll come on to my final slide, thinking about some things to consider, is it's not a quick win, and it's not, unless somebody has an idea for a quick win, then you share it in the chat. But it's not. It takes time and effort, and so we do think carefully about what to step into. It's not the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow in any way, shape, or form, I don't think. But we can perhaps talk about that. Let me finish by going back to sharing the slide, and then I'll keep this one up, and then just a few points. You can see that. So some of this we've talked about as we've gone along. As we think about trading income, really important in general to understand where our income, where our resources are coming from, what's that mix, and to do that, however, whatever size organisation, charity we are, to do that not just as a whole, but for the different elements, the different projects is really important. Some of us will be very familiar with that, but I couldn't sort of recommend that highly enough to look at the detail of what's coming from where, because that helps us to think about resilience more than sustainability. We know sustainability is a myth, but resilience is something we can be working towards and improving upon by looking at that funding mix. Learn from what others are doing and innovate, and this is brilliant. So again, thanks to CCVS, I think opportunities like this, and I would say, in 5 or 6 minutes of talking, or perhaps up to 10 minutes that we have today, there's not a lot to fit in, not a lot of time to fit in. So more than happy for people to contact me afterwards, email, and or to meet up. Happy to have those conversations. As you move forward, and this is for Romsey Mill as well, trying to keep thinking about it with clarity about what our optimum mix is of trading versus other sources of income. The time as well as the resource we're potentially considering investing in trading is really important. We have been fortunate. So with Cara Coffee, we were fortunate that we were able to secure a capital grant to cover quite a lot of the setup costs, which then actually meant that we were very quickly trading to create surplus that was then reinvested back into Romsey Mill. So that is a trading subsidiary. And so we do what Livy was describing at the start, is we're able to gift that back to Romsey Mill and gain the benefit of gift aid on that. But it was good that we had a grant at the start, because if we didn't, obviously we would have made that investment for our own reserves if we'd had them, and then we would have had to be paying that back to Romsey Mill during the next 3 years or 5 years of our trading, and actually we probably wouldn't then be creating surplus for quite a long time. So maybe as you think about trading opportunities, look at capital fundraising applications that you might be able to make to help with that. And being really realistic about timelines and results. It does take a lot of time to think about trading and the different nuances of different aspects of trading. So I knew very little about baristering and coffee shop supply and demand and footfall and all sorts of other things, and that's taken us time to learn. And so we have that knowledge now, and therefore we might consider, another venture of us in a similar sort of way, but actually it doesn't generate significant amounts of surplus. So to just give you an indication, I think probably our surplus, once we've covered our costs and also the trading company Cara Coffee has paid back Romsey Mill for the time that we put in the management time, we've probably got a surplus of about £9,000, which is great. It's brilliant. I mean, that's a great amount of resource to have. But actually with Cara Coffee, just to give you an indication, we're very fortunate that the partner organisation we work with doesn't charge us rent on the premises. So if they did, that would completely shift the business model. Location's already also very important to the business model there, as is a ready supply of, or not a ready supply, the ability to nurture volunteer relationships. And I would say that's another key link to make if you're thinking about trading, is how might volunteers get involved with those opportunities, and helping them to link that back to the charitable mission, because people may not be that interested in volunteering in a coffee shop unless they understand it does feed back into your mission, your purpose, your values. So I hope it's whistle stop. I hope that's been helpful in part, not in whole.